Hello and welcome back. Change of pace from Napoleon. Today we're going to be playing Comancheria, The Rise and Fall of the Comanche Empire, which is a solo game from GMT Games and Joel Toppen. And the game is being reprinted as I'm making this, so a lot of people will be hopefully getting this game for the first time. I bought it back when it originally came out. I didn't play it a ton, but the reprint has sort of encouraged me to sort of dive back into it. Now, I noticed at the time that there was no TTS module for it, so I reached out to the designer, and he very graciously gave me permission and the assets to create a tabletop simulator module for it. That's not available as I'm making the video, but hopefully by the time the video is out, it'll be available, and you can download that in the Steam workshop. So just a couple of quick notes in terms of playing this. The version of the TTS module that I'm using, I've scanned my personal version of the player aids into it. The actual version of the TTS module won't have those. That's where you need to own a physical copy of the game in order to have those available. Also, I am what I would call not good at this in two senses. I'm still getting the mechanics in my head, and I'm also very bad strategically and tactically, I think, at playing it. But one of the things that means is while I'm playing this, I have to go dive into the playbook and the rules to sort of make sure that or the play aids and the rules to make sure that I get the procedures right. So there's probably going to be a lot of points where I pause the video. So the editing may seem a bit choppy, but I'm going to do that because it saves me a lot of time later from having to actually go and edit the video, which is an incredibly time consuming process. And hopefully it won't be too disturbing. If I happen to forget to unpause and play a section of the game, I will try to take you back and sort of explain what happened while I had the camera off. So with that, I'm gonna be diving in, and I'm going to be playing this scenario, Onto the Plains, which starts with the game setup in 1700. This is the scenario that is actually played, or a portion of it is played out in the tutorial, but I am going to just play it myself, not following the tutorial, and see what I get up to. My victory condition is to fulfill the victory check objective of card H1, and that is over here. So my victory condition is I have to control Upper Arkansas and have a rancheria in a second territory. So if we look at where we start, I start with my rancheria in Upper Arkansas #1. There are two rival tribes in Upper Arkansas 4 and 5, so I have to get rid of those in order to control Upper Arkansas. And then I'm going to have to place another rancheria probably in one of these two territories, either in Llano Estacado, Lower Arkansas, or the Red River. So with that as preamble, I am going to dive right in. And so just going over here, we skip the war column phase unless there's a war column on the board, and there isn't. So we go to the operations selection phase, and I am going to take actions. So that is going to be my choice. Choice is to take actions. All right, and I only have one rancheria on the board right now. That is Rancheria A. So the first thing I do is I take all of my unfinished bands, war bands, and you can see the other side is F, and that means that they've moved already this turn. I take all my unfinished bands and I place them on the empty spaces next to my Paraibo. And I'm using Mahimiana and Paraibo. I'm using the pronunciation that I got from Joel's tutorials. And by the way, Joel does have excellent tutorials out there if you're trying to learn the game. But I place them here, and we won't kind of see, there's some nuances to this that hopefully we'll encounter later, but this is how I sort of decide what to do. And so the first thing I'm going to do then after placing them there is I'm going to activate this warband, and I have to activate at least one of them. When I do this take actions, I can choose not to activate these two. Now, the other thing I can do is when I go out to take my actions, I am able to take resources from from my rancheria in order to take actions. So I am going to take horses, which makes it easier to move. It costs one movement point to move as opposed to 2. And I'm going to take my Mahimiana, which is essentially my war leader, and that is the stack that I am going to take with me. So I'm going to put them on the board. And so this stack has a movement capability of 5. 2 is its strength, 5 is its movement capability. So actions that I'm going to take, and you can use this to mark this over here to track it if you think you're going to lose track. I don't believe I'm going to lose track. Oh, let me pause for a second. I forgot, at the beginning, you're supposed to choose one culture card. I forgot to do that. I'm going to take horsemanship. So if I ever get in a battle, I get a +1 DRM for Comanche bands in possession of a horse's counter. It makes me sort of better at fighting on horses. So I'm going to move 1. That takes me to there. Cost me 1 movement point because I have horses. And then I'm going to move 2 to move to Upper Arkansas number 5. And then I'm going to switch actions and I'm going to raid. I'm going to raid this rival's settlement. Okay, so when I do a raid, I'm going to do a procedure which is very common in the game called a success check. So first thing I do is I just determine how many counters I'm drawing in order to see how many success checks I get. So I get 2 counters because my warband strength is 2. And then I have my Mahimiana with me. And when you have your Mahimiana with you, you get to roll a die. And if it is less than his medicine rating, which is 3, this is his row here. If it's less than his medicine rating, I get to draw an extra counter. If it's less than half of his medicine rating, I get to draw 2 extra counters. So in essence, if I roll a 2 or a 3, okay, I was just confirming, if it's less than or equal to his medicine rating, I get 1 extra. So if I roll a 2 or 3, I'm going to draw an extra success counter. If I roll a 1, I will be drawing 2 extra success counters. So we're going to roll this yellow die for that purpose. And I roll a 2, so I'm going to be drawing 1 more. So I've got 2 for the band and 1 for the Mahimiana, so I'm going to draw 3. And so here's this draw cup here. And the draw cup has a mixture of success markers and enemy action tokens right now. And essentially, I'm trying to draw successes for me, but very often you will draw enemy action tokens, which is how the enemy gets to do things in the game. So the more you try to do things, the more reaction you provoke, which is, I think, one of the more clever mechanics in this game and its predecessor, Navajo Wars. So right there, I drew 3 enemy APs, so I put that there. So the enemy has 3 APs available. I drew 1 success count token, and I drew another enemy AP. So because I have my Mahimiana, the success token goes on his track. I get to choose either a captive or a horse. Essentially, in the raid, I'm stealing this from my rival. So I get to draw a captive or a horse, and I'm going to draw a horse. And then I place a ravaged token on that space. Now, had I drawn more than 1 success token, I would have drawn more. I could have, for each success token, I get to choose a captive or a horse. So if I'd drawn 2 success tokens, I could have taken a captive and a horse, 2 horses, 2 captives, but you place 1 ravage counter. That's the maximum you place, and you place that 1 if you get any successes. All right, so that has taken me 1 move, 2 moves, that's 3, and I'm gonna raid 1 more time. So I'm gonna spend another movement point to raid. So I'll just move this. That'll take me down. I'll have 1 movement point available, and I'm going to roll again for my Mahimiana. This time I roll a 6, so this time I am only drawing 2 tokens. And I draw 2 enemy APs and 1 more success. So this time I am going to take a captive. And horses we've already seen. I'll show you one other reason that horses are good in just a second here. Captives have this 1 on them, so they're useful for when you do passage of time. You can increase, you can use them. They're population points. You can increase them to use them to increase your band strength, but you can also trade them for trade goods, which allow you to re-roll or not re-roll, redraw results that you don't like. Now, the downside of this is I've given my enemy 8 APs with which to react. So I find myself here with 1 movement point left. So I'm going to move 1 to there. Now, the other thing that horse tokens are good for is you can spend 1 in order to gain a movement point. So the horses that I stole during that raid, I'm going to spend, and I'm going to use that to get back to my Rancheria. When I get back to my Rancheria, I place this warband here, and I flip that to its finish side. That band is now finished. Now, it's really important you don't unstack these right now. And the reason is because I'm going to send another warband out, but I can't use the resources that came back from this raid, right? I can't take the Mahimiana to a new place. I can't use these horses, and I can't take those captives. So that is the end of that. It is almost the end of that, but one of the things I forgot is, because I did draw 1 success, I do actually get a token, a ravaged. I get to place a ravage counter there. And let me talk real quickly about this. So there's a couple of development cards in play. One of them is the Apache War. So after completing a player action, if there are 3 or more ravage counters on a tribe, remove that tribe from play. So if I can get 3 ravage counters here, I would remove this tribe from play. This settlement is actually called a tribe. I've got a Ute Alliance card that I can buy at some point, and it gives me some benefits. And then kind of crucially here for this first turn, the War of Spanish Succession is going on. So while this is in play, my enemies will not follow war and subjugate instructions. We'll see how that plays out later. That'll make more sense later. Okay, so now I'm going to activate my second band. They're going to go off and do a very different activity. So I'm only going to give them horses, right? I can't give them my Mahimiana, and there isn't really a reason to give them more than 1 horse token. I can give them more than 1 horse token if, for example, my plan is to move them a bunch and leave them out there. So I'm going to move them 1 to this space, and then I am going to do an action called Hunt. So 2 MPs if I possess the Mahimiana, which I don't. So otherwise 3 MPs. The target space must contain a bison counter. So basically I take possession of the bison counter. So I spend 3 MPs and I am now in possession of that bison counter. So essentially we went hunting. And that takes me down to 1 MP, and you can guess with that MP I'm going to move back to that space and flip them to finished, and I leave them like that. So that is 2. Now I could activate this third band, but I don't want to, because I want to leave myself some options to do a couple of things next, sort of on my next activation. So having finished taking my actions, I move this operations token down a space on this track, and we'll see how this track sort of works as I go along. But for right now, I just move it down 1 space, and I'm still in a space. It doesn't have a number, like you can see there, and it is still in this may not do passage of time. So really, I'm kind of limited in what I can do when I'm in this space, when I'm in that area of the track. So the last thing you do, having taken your action, is that the enemy now gets a turn, and that's where all of this comes into play, among some other things. So let me just make sure I got this in my head, and then I'll be right back, and we'll have the enemy take actions. Okay, so the first thing that happens is that now we get to actually unstack these. So essentially, all of these things are now in the possession of the Rancheria. So two finished bands. I think we have 4 horse counters, sorry. We have a bison and a captive. So that is all in the possession. That is back with the Rancheria now. Then we roll a die, and if it is less than or equal to the number of finished bands in this Rancheria, the enemy's going to get a free activation. And I would roll for each Rancheria. So we're going to roll this die, and if it's 2 or less, the enemy gets a free activation. It's a 3, so they don't. So that's good. Now the enemy gets to move, and essentially they get to move if there are enemy... Sorry, I'm actually forgetting something. Let me just make sure I'm doing this right. But I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting something. And I am. So the next thing that I do is I draw a counter from here. By the way, I keep shuffling this. It's just a habit. This is actually set up in the TTS mod as a random delivery, so you don't actually have to shuffle it every time. I draw one, and if it's enemy APs, I place it here. If it's a success counter, it goes back in here. And if it's an instruction, instructions can end up in this cup. You actually execute the enemy instruction. We'll see what that looks like in a second. But unfortunately, I drew 4 enemy APs. But this draw is a way of, like, if you didn't generate any of these, you can't be guaranteed that the enemy isn't going to do something. So now we move on to where the enemy actually acts. And unfortunately, I've given him, 12 APs in order to take actions, which is deeply, deeply unfortunate. So first thing I have to do is I have to determine which enemy is acting, and then I determine which of their instructions is going to flip. So I'm going to roll. The yellow die is going to be used to determine who the enemy is, and the green die is going to be used to determine what flips. That'll become clear in 2 seconds. So I've rolled a 3 and a 3. So I check my history card, and you can see on this history card, a die roll 3 means that the west enemy is going to act. So that is this yellow enemy, and it is the Spanish in this scenario. Sorry about that, just getting some texts in that I had to deal with. Okay, so the enemy has... So we are going to be dealing with the west, and this 3 means that the third instruction in the west flips. So it flips from being a settle action to a war action. That's actually very good for me right now. So now we begin executing enemy actions. So we take the first action, which is subjugate, and we move it to the inactive column. Technically, I'm probably doing this slightly out of order. I think I actually execute it and then move it, but you'll get the drift. So, and the 3 on it, you can see that 3 on it means it costs 3 APs. So I'm going to take this AP marker and I'm going to put it back in the draw cup. And just a quick TTS note, this cup is set that every time things come out of it, there'll always be a question mark side up, so you can drop them in any orientation. So now I'm going to do a subjugation action, which costs 3 enemy APs. So we're going to go over here and we'll take a look at what that is. So in a subjugate action, where are you? There you are. If +1 ravage counters in an enemy space belonging to the active enemy, execute a recover instruction instead and terminate this procedure. So I don't have any ravage counters. I have ravage counters here, but that's the gray enemy. That's my north enemy. And so I don't have any ravage counters on a yellow space. So I ignore that, which means that I'm executing the subjugate instructions. But while this is in play, war and subjugate instructions have no effect. So essentially, I spend the 3 APs and do nothing. So the game gives you a bit more of a quiet beginning, but things get rolling pretty quickly. So now the next one, we go to the next instruction, and I'm basically going to execute instructions until either I empty the column or I run out of APs. So that one also costs 3 APs. So we're going to do a culture action. And essentially a culture action, if +1 ravage counters, but we know that that's not true. So basically in most of these cases, if they have ravage counters, they'll they'll execute those instead of the actual action. They will prioritize removing ravage counters. But they don't have any in West. So the player loses 1 culture point and an additional culture point for each settlement belonging to the active enemy. Now, this is not a settlement. This just tells me who my enemy, my yellow enemy is. So he, ooh, shoot, I moved that instead of my MP marker, sorry. So he is going to, I'm going to lose 1 culture point. That's this. Now, just a quick note here. You have culture points and military points, which kind of mark, you know, your how good you're doing at maintaining your Comanche culture and your Comanche military culture. If both of these are ever at 0, you lose the game automatically. And as the designer says, that's pretty much the worst way you can lose the game. It's better to miss your victory objective than to have that happen. That essentially represents you just getting kind of wiped out culturally. So that is that, and that's not good, but it could have been worse, obviously. So the next one is this War 4 counter, and that costs 4 enemy AP, so I'm going to spend that token. And now, we pretty much know, I mean, I'll go look at it, but War is very similar to Subjugate. I mean, the actual action isn't, but it's similar to Subjugate. Oh, actually, it's not. So in... oh, sorry. It is similar, but they don't have a war column on the map. That's step 1. So they don't already have a war column. Then step 2 is you check for ravage counters. They don't have those. And then step 3, if they're already a peace space. And then step 4, form a war column. I mean, essentially, because they're not going to get to step 2, they're not going to execute step 2. They're not going to execute the war because of, again, the War of Spanish Succession. So they spend the APs. And it goes over here. Now we have 2 enemy APs left, and we have a war. The next counter costs 3. So what we do is we return that, but we give 2 available enemy APs. We basically make change with that. Okay, and then let me just confirm this. Oops, I'm looking at the wrong place. Oh, sorry, it's going to be over here. Sorry, you see, this is, I'm going to pause while I make sure I know what I'm doing. Okay, so I actually did a couple of things wrong. So the first thing is that if the amount of APs that you have here is not enough to pay for this, you actually leave this here. You don't make change for it. You just, and mark it over there, you leave it here. The reason that may seem a small thing, but one of the reasons that matters is that the mix of this cup can be kind of important. And this means that there's 1 less enemy AP counter in there. So having done that, so having finished, what we do is we do what's called resetting the enemy instructions. So we slide all of these instructions up. The instructions that are left slide all the way to the top. Then, suddenly had a moment of self-doubt here, there. Then these counters, essentially, they slide down and across and up. But, basically you take the lowest counter on the inactive display and move it to the open box. So this is a way that this column is constantly getting mixed up, right? Originally, they were in the order Subjugate, Culture, War. Now they're in the opposite order, War, Culture, Subjugate. And so it kind of keeps this sort of display being very dynamic and unpredictable. And that, I believe, is the end. I don't have the Sanivate card. Sanivate Trail card has not been revealed. So that is the end of essentially the first turn. So I'm going to do one more turn here. Then I'm going to cut the video and we'll keep going. Sort of, I'm going to try to keep these maybe a half hour, somewhere between a half hour and 45 minutes to keep them watchable. But so I'm going to play one more turn, and that will be it for this. But hopefully you're enjoying this. As always, liking, subscribing, commenting, all those things are great for the channel. So if you're enjoying this, let me know. If there's other things you'd like to see me play, let me know. All right. So I am going to, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take actions again. Okay, sorry, I was just checking something. So, first things first, we flip all of our finished bands to active. And then we line them up again. Now, we are going to, again, we have to activate one, so we are going to activate this one. We are going to take the horses in the Mahimiana. Let me think for just a second here. Okay, sorry. So I'm going to take, just as a reminder here, to myself as much as anything, I'm taking my Mahimiana, warband, and those horses. And I'm going to move 1, 2, and then I am going to attempt a raid here one more time. So I rolled a 6, so I'm still only drawing 2. So 3 enemy APs and a success check. So I'm going to take some captives. And they will go with that warband. And then I will place a Ravage token, only I'm not going to. Because of this Apache War card, after completing a player action, so I've just completed a raid action, if there are 3 or more Ravage counters on a tribe, remove that tribe from play. So this tribe is now out of play, so that is moving me along towards my objectives. That tribe is out of play. And then I will take 2 move actions to move this back to my Rancheria. And I will mark him as finished. Now, I'm not going to move these other 2 this turn, and why will become obvious in a moment. Hopefully become obvious in a moment. Now, one option I have is, when I'm stopping here, I could flip this to finished and use this to gain 1 action point. And we'll see later what action points are useful for. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to actually just finish my turn. So we're going to unstack all of these. That will all go like that. And let me think for a second. So, sorry. So now I'm going to be doing, that is the end of that. So I move my operations counter down. And now I'm going to be doing enemy operations. So, first things first, I'm rolling a die if it's less than or equal to the number of unfinished bands. So I've only got 1 unfinished band. But I did roll less than or equal to that. So the enemy is going to get a free instruction. So I'm going to, yellow die is which enemy. Green die is what's going to flip. So again, we have the west is activating. War. Oh, that's so bad. Okay. So the west is going to activate that culture. So they are going to reduce my culture yet again for free. That was not good. Okay. Having done the free activation, now we draw 1. So that being a success check, I just put it right back in the draw cup. And so they have 5 APs. So they're going to be able to do a couple of things here. Well, it depends on who I draw, of course. So this time, the north enemy is going to be activating. That's that northern tribe. And number 5 is actually going to flip. So, okay, so pre-activation out of the way. Now we have to figure out who's going to take the actual activation. So the enemy that takes the free activations isn't necessarily the one that takes the sorry. Sorry about that. I had a kind of a massive interruption with the dogs going crazy, and I believe that I have rolled and ended up with the north enemy is activated, and I flipped a token here. Looking at the dice, I think I may have done it backwards, but that's kind of like my brain did that, so I'm going to trust that. And I think what I was about to say is one of the reasons that I did what I did in terms of doing a raid to try to take this out is that in case they activated, I didn't want them to start stripping ravaged markers off. So they have 5 APs. So they're going to start by doing a raid. So let's look at what that looks like. Raid. The north does not have a war column. There are no ravage counters. So we're going to form a war column. Place the raid instruction to the same space as a randomly chosen non-allied tribe nearest to the rancheria. Place a north war column strength counter, AP cost the raid, into the same space. Okay. So, luckily this is just a raid 2. So we place that there. That tribe is closest to me. And then we grab a north enemy. So now there is an enemy warband on the map. And so that now we'll get to see what happens when there are war columns. It's a pretty small one, so that's not, hopefully not too bad. But that cost me 2 APs, so we'll spend that token. And then the next one costs 3 APs, so we'll spend that token. And this is one of the interesting things about this game versus Navajo Wars. Some of these counters actually end up on the map board, which can mean that column isn't there. So, ally. If there's a ravage counter, there isn't. Place an ally instruction counter on a non-allied tribe. So essentially, I'm going to take this counter, and I'm going to place an ally token. I'll put it underneath it just for tidiness sake. So that tribe is now allied with me. So strangely, they have decided to both form a war party to raid me as well as ally with me on the same turn. So that spends the last APs available. So all of this, all of that moves up. And that is the end of that. All right. So that will be where we'll stop the video here. We'll get a chance at the start of the next video to look at the war column phase for the first time, because now there's actually a war column on the board. But with that, hopefully you're enjoying this. Let's call this a stumble through of Comancheria as I try to come to grips with both the rules as well as figuring out how to play it even remotely well. But if you're enjoying the video, it would be great if you could leave a like, comment. If you're enjoying the channel, what we do here, subscribing is always appreciated, and it'll let you know when we produce more content. And sharing the videos is also another really good way to help the channel and help things get found. But with that, we will end here, and we'll see you next time for more Comancheria on Agility Snips Gaming Table.